Ladies and gents, time flies when you're having fun. This is episode 5 of the Relaxed Running podcast. I hope that time's flown for you. It's awkward if it's only me enjoying myself. What are you doing here if that's the case? I'm not sure. Hey, today I catch up with the national 5,000 metre champ, Jordan Gusman. Funny story, got to give a big shout out to Craig Huffer, who yesterday I called and said, mate, I need to catch up with you for a run and to do a podcast. He said, you can forget both of those things, but I'll put you in contact with Jordan Gusman, who's a local, a Hawthorn local. I'd never met Jordan before today. I'd followed his racing pretty closely over the last few years, and I shot him a message this morning, quite forward, just saying, mate, super keen to catch up for a run. I'm just around the corner from you, can run as many times a week as you want. Also, let's record a podcast this afternoon. That's pretty, you can't get much more forward than that. So, it worked out well. It worked out well for me anyway. I spent 2.5 hours with the bloke today, having some coffees, talking, running, and then we sat down for about an hour just to record the chat, which is what we've got here. It was a really insightful conversation. The bloke is a freakishly talented runner. How's this for range? He's run 48 seconds for 400 metres, 148 for 800 metres, 337 for 1500 metres, and 1320 for 5k. He got the great man Stewie McSwain over 5Ks at the national champs. I think it was earlier this year. Incredible race. The guy can kick. He's a freakish talent. And I was really excited to have a chance to sit down with him because it'd be cool for you guys just to get some insight on how this guy goes about his training and how he goes about dealing with injuries and just the mindset of an elite athlete. So I picked his brain on as much of that as I could. It was a really good conversation. I really enjoyed myself, and I know that, a few years ago when I was a young up-and-coming runner, the chance to sit down with a bloke of this calibre and just fire questions was invaluable. So for any of you young athletes out there, I really encourage you to pay a lot of attention to what this guy has to say, because he's been through a lot of stuff that the life of an elite athlete entails, and I think it would be really handy stuff for you to learn now. So hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. I'll get out of your way. This is me and the great man, Jordan Gusman.
He's like, I'm going to put in a good word for the recruitment coach. I'm like, man, I could not take a hit. Like, I broke my ribs. Falling over a 5-year-old kid. But
I'll be the same, man. Actually, it's funny you say, because I busted my ribs so good. It was like my first, I'd played 3 games. And I remember my wife was on the sideline, and I remember her saying, just don't be too much of a pussy. Like, you know what I mean? If you're going to play footy, make sure you take a bump. Anyway, so I went in for the ball and I got crunched, and I was like, just don't be a pussy. And bro, I was on the ground and I was struggling to breathe, and I was gasping. Anyway, I was like, I'm just winded. I got my breath and I'm like, nah, that is tender. Like I'm sure that's not normal. And it turns out later that night I had such bad pain through here that I went and got it scanned. And I'd fractured like 2 or 3 of my ribs. And the next day I went to I remember just getting up, and it just felt impossible to breathe. It was like a gasping kind of feeling.
Mine was interesting because I fell over like in the first 2 minutes of my run, and I kept going for like an hour or whatever. And my heart rate was a little high, and it was like I felt like a little uncomfortable to breathe, but it didn't really feel that bad. And then I went the whole week feeling okay. And then after that race, I don't know what it was about the track race, I guess just like running so intensely, maybe like just jarred it or something, I don't know. It was pretty bad, and then I slept on the pull-out sofa. So I had like the metal bar around the ribs. And after that, I woke up the next morning and went out for my long run. I literally couldn't breathe. And then I drove from Sydney to Melbourne.
Oh my gosh.
In the car, like sitting with the ribs, and I kept saying to my girlfriend, I think my ribs are like fractured. She's like, oh, you're just like being soft, like there's nothing wrong with it. And I'm like, okay. And I go see Karen, and you know Karen, obviously, she's just like, you can walk in and she'll say, oh, your sinuses are bunged, whatever. She like touches here, she's like, I think your ribs are fractured. I'm like, oh, okay.
Honestly, Karen has a reputation. She can just look at your body and go.
No, I didn't believe her. I was like, no, surely not. Like I didn't just run that like with my ribs fractured, and it was a PB at the time as well. And then she sent me for scans, and 2 days later she's like, oh yeah, they're fractured. I'm like, oh.
Wait, so that was, you were telling me at Axel before, so that race that you're speaking about, running a PB, was that the one that you beat Stewie in?
Yeah.
So that was that's a bragging right there, because I was impressed enough just watching this race and seeing the fact that you outran Stewie, but the fact that you've done it with broken ribs is just like a little bit of street cred for you as well. But how long have you been living in Hawthorn for? Because I was talking to Huff yesterday, and I was telling you earlier, I said, Huff, mate, I want you to, are you back in Melbourne? Let's team up for a run, let's catch up. And he's like, mate, I'm busy, which is just Huff talk for I'm not coming on for a little while. He goes, but get the Gus on. He said, you're a neighbour. So, mate, you live 400 metres. I was stoked. I'm speaking of fangirl, I fangirled when I realised there was a 30 and 20 man in town. So how long have you been around the corner?
I think since January. I probably spent more time overseas, honestly, than I have here. So I moved in end of Jan, and I had January, February in Hawthorn, and then I went overseas, and I've been back since end of July. So I probably have spent more time out of home than in home. But yeah, my dog and my girlfriend have been here for the past year. So yeah, I think we'll stay put for a little while. So
yeah. So and you moved down from New South, did you say, or Gold Coast?
So I lived in Coffs Harbour, which is just south of the Gold Coast. So I moved down from there to Canberra in 2014, I think, and then moved down here in 2019.
I tell you what, it's one of those things. I said to you before that we started that I was up in Sydney last week, went a little bit further north, and thought I was in tanning town for the rest of the year. And I came back and it was just jumper time, so it would have been a big adjustment for you coming down to Melbourne. Like, what's been are you a fan of the town yet, or how you settling in?
Yeah, I like it. Obviously, it's a little different. There's a lot more going on, but I think the running is pretty good. I was a little skeptical, I guess, of how good the running would be, especially Coffs Harbour, or where I grew up. Crindai Beach is a small town where it's basically had like a 3k bike path loop around the town, and that was it. And there was maybe like 400 people. I think there was 80 something people in my primary school, so it was pretty small.
Yeah.
And the running was okay, but you kind of had to drive anywhere. So until I got my license, I was just kind of stuck around this loop running. When I moved to Canberra, obviously the running is pretty good there. You've got Stromlo cross country course and a bunch of really good running pretty close to the city. And I really doubted that the running would be good here, obviously being such a big city. But I've really liked it so far.
Did you ever train with Kyle Simons?
I never trained with him. Actually, I'm pretty sure I stayed in Falls Creek with him 1 year. So
is that right? Okay, because he's a good mate of mine. I met him through Joe Carmody years and years ago, and he sort of stepped up to the race scene. And I remember the first day I met him, I'd been training my ass off for years, and I think I'd got my PB down to about a 4:15, over 1500. And I remember Kale, he was a couple of years younger than me, stepped up in like the biggest, fattest pair of New Balance shoes to the start line. And he came third in the state champs in 4:13.
Dang.
And I almost handed in my resignation to the sport that day because I'd been busting my ass. But he's produced some talent up that way, because the reason I ask is because Kale used to train with Dick. I think must have been a couple of years before you.
Yeah.
But there was... completely blanked on her last name, Lisa Corrigan. Like, she was up there as well, and he's produced some good talent, eh? Like, what was it about his training, do you reckon, that sort of
I think
so many people?
It was like it's very like scientific based, I guess, but he kind of like dumbs it down so that anyone can understand it, and I think that was what I really appreciated. I guess it was either like move to Melbourne or move to Canberra for me, coming from Coffs Harbour. Just Canberra was that little bit closer, so I could still get back and see family, and they could see me. And just like a few of the friends that I grew up with running ended up moving down to Canberra for ANU and for their studies, and just found Dick and were training with Dick. So I think like all of those factors kind of led me towards Canberra. But yeah, it was just, I think the training was probably more aerobic for a 1500 runner. It was kind of obviously him being like a marathon coach. He coaches Shelley at the time and that sort of stuff, and he had a few marathoners in Canberra at the time. So I was always kind of doing longer work, and I think that's naturally what I respond really well to. So I was running good 1500s off it, but that's obviously the reason why I could run good 5Ks without even really focusing on it. I probably was focusing on it, I just didn't know it. So I think that kind of training just clicked for me, and it's clicked for a few others, but obviously training is so individual that I don't think it's necessarily the training, more so that it's the individual and if that training suits them. So
yeah, it's a good point. And I don't think it was so interesting to hear you talk before, because I know your PBs over the distances, like over sort of 1500 to 5k, but I couldn't believe it at Axel before you telling me that you had a background in sort of 400 to 800 metre running. I actually, when I was up in Sydney last week, actually the last guest on here was James Gurr.
Oh, yeah.
And Gurr was telling me the same thing. He said that from his background was as a 400 metre guy, spent some time in the States, and like obviously he maxed out at sort of 800 metres. But your range is incredible. Like what did you say you'd run for 400 and 800?
Yeah, I ran 48.8 in high school.
That's disgusting.
So. I feel like I've always been pretty good at like the under distance of whatever I'm focusing at, but never really like hit it right with whatever I was focusing. So I feel like as a 48.8 runner, you should be able to run quicker than 148, and I never did. And then like as a 148 runner, I felt like I should have run quicker than 3:37 in the 15, and never did. So it never really like translated in the distance I was focusing to, which is I found kind of strange. So I guess now maybe 3:37 and 13:20 is kind of it correlates well to each other. So I think that was definitely my sweet spot, and I found that's my distance. But yeah, I don't think I'll ever get back down to 148, but I really wish I ran a little bit quicker when I had that 48-second speed.
Just for the bragging rights, yeah. Mate, it's already a bragging right in the distance running scene as well. I can't imagine, you should go up to Ballarat and have a run around with Moneghetti and stuff, because that'd be glorified, that kind of speed amongst that crew up there.
They say Ballarat is the home of Australian distance running, so I really wish I could get out there sometime.
Man, you should get up there. You should get up, especially with what you were telling me about the pace that you do your long runs at the moment. I moved up there in 2007. Yeah, it was 2007 to do some uni. And I remember I thought, this is going to be fantastic. I'm going to get a chance to train with Steve Moneghetti and Collis Birmingham, and like Matt Griffin was up there at the time. He was a great 800 metre guy, and I remember getting there and going out for the first Sunday long run, and Nath Hardigan was just there, amped up, ready to go. And it was like an hour 45 run, which was a new distance to me. I'd sort of done like an hour 15, hour and a half to the time. I thought I'd be fine. It's like 15 minutes.
Yep.
But I reckon 400 metres into the run, I'm thinking, okay, we've got an hour 44 and 15 seconds to go.
Yep.
And this pace is cracking. Like we were motoring along. So I'm not sure what it was about Ballarat, whether it was I think like there's a little bit of a placebo around the 400 metres altitude or whatever it is. But the boys, they just run at a ridiculous pace, and it's like the ones who don't break seem to be the ones who break records. Like Moneghetti's just like I don't think that man can break. He's 97 now and he's still beating me.
Yeah, that's pretty incredible for sure. I mean, I think the difference why I can do those like hard long runs is because in our group, and what I've been taught is to kind of like build up throughout the run kind of thing. So it's only after like that hour mark that I really start to push it. But I think if someone pushed the pace in the first kilometre or two, I'd be done as well.
You're still warming up. That's what I always remember, actually going out for a run with the Huffers when I was in high school. And I remember we were always so competitive. And I remember me and Dean just, I don't know what it was, I was just tagging along. Like I looked at the times that Dean had run at that time, and I thought, okay, I'm just trying to keep up with this bloke. So we got going for that first K and a half, and it was like, all right, it's ready to go. And like little junior Huff Craig was nowhere to be seen. And we looked around, and he's 200 metres behind. And Dean's like, mate, what are you doing? And he goes, I'm still warming up. Like he had no trouble on the back end of the run, Yeah,
he still does that.
Yeah, he's got some long legs to warm up.
I know.
Far out, man. Dude, pumped to be able to have a sit down with you and just fire a few questions about training and diet and the injury and everything that I know you're sort of at least a little bit familiar with.
Yeah.
Before we get started though, like just speaking about the times and stuff that you've run. So 13:20 is the PB on paper. But what you told me before about the night you ran 13:30 and realised you might be able to be a pretty decent 5k runner is a story that I'd love everyone out there to hear, because I follow the running scene pretty closely. And at time I can't believe I've missed a night like that, because that was a pretty incredible story. Can you just run this back over that story again, the way you found out that you could be half a decent 5k runner?
I mean, I've had a few nights like that, which are probably like my standout results, unfortunately, have been like backing up for 2 races in one night rather than like hitting one race out of the park. But yeah, this night was it was interesting, I guess, because at the start of the year, I was really focused on running a good 1500, and it was coming up into the Commonwealth Games in 2018. And I ended up getting bronchitis for our trials, so I was running really well. I think I ran not far off my PB in Canberra, basically just paced by a few of my training mates. So I was in really good shape, and I ended up getting sick, so I took like maybe a month off. Excuse me. And just was kind of getting into it, I think around April, and the Canberra Times Fun Run came up, or the Australian Running Festival, sorry. And at that time I was kind of just like doing some mileage work, doing a few longer repeats and threshold runs and that sort of stuff. And I was like, maybe I'll just like enter the half marathon for a bit of fun. I'd never run the half marathon, whatever. And I think I ran the half marathon and the 5K that weekend. So I think maybe the 5K was the first day on the Saturday and the half marathon was the Sunday. So I won both of them at the time, so anything special, but the prize money was like $1,200 between the two. And I was like, hang on, like I'm not in bad shape. Maybe I'll like consider going over to the US, because I didn't really get a season with my sickness in Australia. So I looked at flights and they were exactly $1,200, and I was like, all right, I'll do it, whatever. So booked my flights. I messaged a friend of mine in LA, because I was basically racing Peyton Jordan, which is in San Francisco, and then the Oxy High Performance Meet, which is in LA. Message a mate that I'd just randomly met in Flagstaff one day, and he'd driven from Florida, which is the other side of the US, to Flagstaff, and was camping on the side of the trail in his van. And he ended up getting a job delivering cookies and stocking them in supermarkets and stuff in LA. And the guy who ran the cookie route ended up like housing him and finding him a house. And so I stayed with this guy who he was pretty wealthy. He had a penthouse apartment in Marina Del Rey and a yacht, and so I crashed with him for 3 weeks.
Perfect.
So this whole trip was just kind of pretty funny, I guess. So I crashed with him for free. He cooked me dinner every night. Got to go out on his yacht, pick me up from the airport, all of that. So pretty cost-effective trip at the moment.
Yeah, wind and dine.
I just thought, well, why not? Just go have a few races. I'm in okay shape. I don't really expect anything out of it. And while I was there, obviously I just had the 2 races, so I decided to just enter as many events as I could. So I entered the 1500 and the 5K at both Peyton Jordan and Oxy. And then I ended up getting stuck in the B heat for the 1500, which I was a little disappointed with. Ended up being slow, and I think I closed in 55 for the last lap or something like that. So I was really happy with that, but the time wasn't quite what I wanted to run. And so I called coach and I explained to him, the race was kind of slow. I won. I was pretty happy with it. Do you think I could run the 5K? And he's like, no, I don't think it's that good an idea. It's not long after the 1500. It's only about 40 minutes. I was like, all right, coach, I'll just go and warm down. So I hung up, I put my joggers on, and I started jogging up and down next to the track. And I was like, yeah, I think I'm going to run the 5K. And at that time, so I was put in the B race 5K as well, and at that time an announcement came over the speakers, which said, due to a few people pulling out, I've decided to put both the races together for the 5K. And I was like, all right, it's going to be pretty quick then. So I just jumped on the line, felt like shit for the first 2 laps because I was kind of still recovering from the 1500, and I just sat at the back, and I just started kind of picking off people and moving up. And I don't remember what we went to 3K in, maybe like 8:07 or 8:08 or something like that. And the wheels fell off the last kilometre or so, and a few people passed me, but I ended up running 13:32, I think it was, 40 minutes after the 1500. And then I called my coach back, and straight away he just knew. He goes, so you ran the 5K, didn't you? I was like, yeah. He's like, okay, what did you run? I was like, 13:32. He's like, oh, okay. And so we spoke about running the 5K potentially at the next meet, and he really wanted me to run the 15, so I had maybe 10 days between. And I don't regret that, because I ended up running a PB in the 1500, which is still my PB at the moment, 3:37.5. I think I came second in that race too, and the 5K didn't end up being as quick as what I ran at Peyton Jordan. So yeah, out of that trip I got to win the 1500 at Peyton. I ran a PB in the 5K and a PB in the 15, and came home pretty happy.
Jeez. So how many 5Ks have you ran?
I mean, now I've run a few like low-key races, but really I've run Peyton Jordan this year. I ran London Diamond League this year, but I was pretty injured at the time, so I ended up pulling out halfway through. I ran ACT National Champs, Sydney Track Classic National Champs, and then I guess that Peyton Jordan B race in 2018, so maybe 5. So
far out, man. So amongst that 5, we were saying before, like to run a 13:30, even after a 3:43, like to close in. I get that it's probably not a balls to the wall kind of pace for you, but at the same time to run a few seconds outside your PB for 1500, then 40 minutes later to back up and run a 13:30. That's exciting prospects for the future. Because how old are you? 24, 25?
25, yeah.
25, man. So you got a good few years up your sleeve to really have a crack at it. Is that the main focus from here on in? Do you think?
Yeah, I think so. Obviously, next year with the Olympics upcoming, the 5K is definitely the focus, and then after that, I guess I'll reassess and maybe consider running more 5K, 10K. And I kind of train like 5K, 10K more so than 15 5K. Especially at the moment, so I think maybe I'll consider 5K, 10K, and then see how I'm going into that next Olympic cycle. Otherwise, probably push out to the marathon and give that a go.
Sure. So how long do you have left to qualify for next year's Olympics?
I'm not sure when the qualification ends. They've changed the system, so it's it's the ranking system rather than the standard time system. So it's a little bit confusing, and I don't think really anyone's got quite a grasp on how it's going to work. They were supposed to trial it last year, and they ended up just pulling the pin on it and saying, "Oh, we're just going to use it for the Olympic year." So, I mean, they've had the ranking system up online for the past year, so you can kind of see if that was in place where you would be respectively. So, I think I've been in the top 40 for the whole year. So, they take 42 to the Olympics.
Yeah, sure.
So basically, I just need to stay in that top 40, 42, and do the same thing that I've done this year, and it should see me at the Olympics hopefully. But
yeah, and Huff was telling me something about you've got your dual citizenship with.
Yeah, so
what's the story there at the moment? I'm not even going to try and introduce the story because I'll butcher it completely. So what's the? Yeah. I know that Malta and Australia is involved, and that's about the extent of my knowledge.
Well, my father is Maltese and my grandfather, his dad was Maltese as well, and his mum. So I grew up pretty close to my grandpa. He lived across the street from me, and he was pretty into my sport as well. I played soccer a lot as a kid, and him and his dad coached my soccer side and would come down and support me every weekend. And then when I got more into running, they would obviously support me in that. So they were a big part in my upbringing. So I decided to get my dual citizenship for Malta. And then recently my grandpa passed away with cancer, and I told him as a young kid that I would run for Malta eventually, and I always thought that it would be at the end of my career. The standards are a little different for Malta than Australia, so I always thought at the end of my career, obviously I'd just go to the marathon and switch over and run a few races for Malta and do him proud. But I ended up I knew he was sick for the past few years, and ended up getting the opportunity to run at a small meet called the Games of Small States of Europe. Mm-hmm. So it's 7 countries, I think, Cyprus, Montenegro, Malta, Luxembourg, Monaco. And I ended up running that this year for Malta, and he passed away about a month later. So I was pretty thankful to be able to run for Malta and for him to see me run for Malta before he passed. And then I decided to switch my allegiance. So from here on in, representing Malta, I can claim some of the Maltese national records, and hopefully be at the Olympics for Malta. Yeah,
that's exciting, man. I had a little sneak peek at the Maltese national records as well before you came on today, and I think they're in some trouble. Yeah. I think the marathon was, and it's nothing to laugh at, but compared to what I imagine you'll run in the next few years, the 2:26 for a marathon.
I think it's 14:30 something for the
14. So I would have held the Maltese national record for the 5K, which is, but they're in some trouble, man. No, that's really exciting. And was it a difficult decision to make? Obviously, with your heritage and stuff. I get that as well. I got family from Montenegro, and I always flirted with the idea that if I ever got good enough, like the idea of doing that side of your family proud was attractive to me as well. Serbia is sort of where my family's from, but that general area. So how did that go? So from a family side of things, I can imagine it was exciting, but from a maybe a personal, what you imagined yourself running in the future, it would have been a little bit of a difficult thing to toy with?
Yeah, it was difficult. Obviously, like I'm proud to be Australian, and I'm equally as proud to be Maltese, and I guess that's like what my pop and my dad instilled in me, is to be proud to be Maltese as well. And if anyone's followed my career and just followed me as a person, they obviously know that I like to be a little different and do things a little differently. And that was one thing in school growing up that made me different to everyone else, and which I thought was really cool. So I knew the opportunity was there, and I'd actually been speaking to the president of Maltese Athletics since 2012, I think. So I've been talking to him for quite some time, and knew that I would have to make this decision at some point. And I was a little worried that, what the community might think. Obviously, my own community around me, but also the running community. And I guess the main concern I thought that they would have is that I was just taking the easy way out, and obviously there's only 3 spots for each country, so it's quite difficult to make top 3 spots in Australia, but also run the standard. And for Malta, because it's such a small nation, they essentially get a wild card to all major championships. So because no one runs the standards or jumps the standards, they just get one position that they can give to someone. So initially I thought that everyone would just think, he's just going just to make a team and get that wild card spot. So it came at a good time, I guess, when I won the Australian Champs and I qualified, and I was technically named on the team for Australia. That then the decision meant that, do you either want to run for Australia or run for Malta? And I just ended up with my grandpa passing, deciding that I would like to run for Malta and run the rest of my career for Malta. So
yeah, that's exciting, man. That's one of those things as well. As you said, the icing on the cake was actually winning the Australian national title.
Yeah,
but
just proving that I could qualify.
Exactly. And I was going to say, with the quality of performances that you had, I don't think anyone would doubt that you beat the best. Like who else have you got to beat in Australia that you haven't beat yet? Do you know what I mean? Like it's anyone who denies that's just, they're kidding themselves essentially, which is a cool place to be for you.
It's funny you said that actually as well, because the Games of Small States is in Montenegro this year. So
is that right?
Yeah,
but I've never actually been, but it looks beautiful.
It was really nice.
So Jesse and I, we lived in London for a couple of years, and there was a little while that we were flirting with the idea of going to spend a month in Montenegro. And I wouldn't rule it out in the future, but for whatever reason we didn't get a chance to get down there. But I've seen some of the photos of the mountains surrounding the beach, the place, and it just, man, it looks incredible.
I posted a few photos on my Instagram story, and all the responses I got were, Malta's treating you really well. Like, this looks like a nice holiday. I'm like, I'm racing as well, but so I was just sitting back on the beach and the mountains.
Well, what is it like running over there?
It was really good. I mean, the competition was a little because it's kind of like an Olympic style competition, I guess, where it's not just athletics in this small game. So I think it was tennis, basketball, swimming, maybe sailing. There's a bunch of different sports, but because they didn't build the facilities obviously for the meet, the swimming pool was like an hour and a half's drive on this like mountain windy road. And the track was like an hour and a half, and then the basketball was an hour and a half in opposite direction, and we were like 3 hours from the airport. So it was really interesting, but the village didn't really let me see too much because the running was just up and down a bike path along the beach. So, but yeah, I mean, I got to see a lot with our hour and a half drive to the athletics track, so it was really nice. But I really wish that I got up into the mountains a little bit more and did a bit more running through there, but it's a little difficult when you have races coming up to run that sort of terrain, and I ended up running the 5k, 10k and 1500 in 3 days at that meet. So I needed all the rest I could get. I
can imagine, man. And they would have been offering up some pretty sweet, what is it, rakia in that part of the world, or Slivovic?
Yeah, something like that.
We spent some time in Greece, and every dinner they would come out after your meal and like offer you just a little bit of Slivovic, and I've never seen my wife so excited on life as after a meal with a bottle of rakia in her hand. So man, I can imagine that's going to be the new celebration drink. But that's for later. That's for later in the conversation. What I'm interested at is just speaking about training, where you're at the moment, and what's on the schedule, because you mentioned earlier, that just anyone who's followed your career, they sort of understand that you've done things a little bit differently. which I like. Like I'm always a little bit of a fan of the outsider, the someone who doesn't just follow along with the grain of how things have been done. But what are a couple of things for those who might not have heard of you yet that you think you might be a little bit known for in terms of doing things differently?
I guess just not like following the traditional footsteps of like how to become a professional athlete, and I'm not quite there yet. I'm earning enough, I guess, to live off from running, but I'm not driving a fancy car or anything like that. And I mean, I don't think too many people in athletics are. It's not really a sport that's known for that. But yeah, I guess like you either go to college or you join a good group in Australia, and the group to join if you are looking to be a professional runner is Nick Beddoe's group with the Melbourne Track Club. And yeah, I mean, I just kind of like to show people that there are options to do it differently than those two options. I'm a big mama's boy and love my family, and I don't think I could live in the US and be away from them for so long and travel for so long. So they really weren't too much of an option for me. I didn't really consider going to college, and yeah, I guess just doing it a little differently and staying in Australia for a lot of the year. And now I did join a US group and training by correspondence, and just doing those little things differently and still being able to compete and be competitive with some of Australia, and hopefully in years to come the world's best. From where I grew up and from what I've done, hopefully just is you know, just shows some younger kids that there are options and different ways to do things than just the traditional path. So and just having fun with it as well. You see a lot of different groups and individuals being very serious, and I don't know if anyone follows my team that I joined, Tin Man Elite, but they're a very fun bunch of guys who just like to enjoy themselves and have a bit of a laugh rather than be too serious. So yeah, that's just kind of what I'm trying to show.
So how does that work? So they're based in, did you say they're based in Colorado?
Colorado,
so they're based in Colorado. So and it's quite a small group.
Mm-hmm.
Did you say, is it TIN, T-I-N, or Team?
Tin Man.
Tin Man Elite. Yeah, sweet. So how does that sort of work? Because obviously people look at running as an individual sport, which it is, like once you're on the start line. But I think like part of the beauty of the sport is just being able to go out and have a chat with your mates and have a run around and you know, have that little bit of incentive to chase after. So how's that process been for you, especially since moving down to Melbourne away from your group and not necessarily having a core group to run with necessarily? I know the great man Huff's looking after you a bit, or you're looking after him. I'm not sure which way that goes. Yeah, what does that process look like? How does your training look at the moment?
Yeah, the thing that I guess sold me a lot on the group and the coaching style was that so the team in Colorado is now I think 12 guys. When I first joined it was maybe like 5 or 6, but the coach himself, who we get the name from, his nickname is Tin Man, Tom Schwartz, was actually living in Boise, Idaho at the time. So he was coaching the whole team by correspondence. So we use an app called Final Surge. He basically just writes down the program, and once we upload our Garmin Connect, it just shoots off all the data to him, and he's able to see all our activities. And then we just report back to him. But I guess just knowing that all those guys had the results that they had, coached by correspondence from him, I knew that he obviously had a pretty good formula, and yeah, it was working for those guys. So that was kind of why I thought that it could work for me, being based in Australia. And I don't have too much trouble with motivation or getting out the door. I really do love running, so that's a big part of it as well, I guess, is being able to run by myself a lot of the time. But it's made easier from a group of guys down here. I've been training with Craig Huffer and Sam McEntee and Matty Clark, and a few other guys are meeting up for long runs with a bunch of guys in Melbourne. So yeah, they do make it a lot easier just to enjoy my running rather than just running repetitively by myself, which does get a little boring sometimes. So yeah, it's been good so far. I think it's a routine that I can manage and still compete relatively well on the world stage by doing what I'm doing. Yeah, that's exciting, man. And the you mentioned just the I guess the traditional training method that's used. It's not even just here; it's all around the world. Mm-hmm. I guess the Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday sessions.
with a couple of long runs, a couple of easy runs in between. It's a formula that works for a lot of people, but for some people, I think it can be one of those things that it's just what's always been done. So I like the fact that you step out and question it a little bit and go, actually, like what is it that I actually need? And so what is like an average training week for you now? Like even if you walk us through where you're at the moment, I know you're doing something a bit differently to what you usually would be, but from where you are now to like a full-blown training week, what does that kind of look like?
I've been training more off, like obviously with the US team, I've been training more off, I guess it's more of a US style based training method. I know they use it a lot in the college system, which is 2 days a week workouts, which is Tuesday, Friday. And then a little bit more focus on a solid long run as another key training session. So you still kind of get the 3 training sessions in there, but it's just not as jam-packed in the week, so allows you a little bit more time for recovery. So at the moment, I'm probably running around 120 kilometres a week, just on single runs, so no afternoon runs. So regular week would go Monday, 60 minutes, pretty easy. Tuesday workout, which kind of.
And what's easy for Jordan Gusman? What are we talking? What numbers are we talking?
I used to run a lot harder, but they kind of taught me in the US to run pretty easy. So around like 4:45, 5-minute pace. So sometimes I'll get down to like 4:30s, but not really that much quicker. Especially coming back off the Sunday long run. A lot of people think that you reset and start the week again fresh on a Monday morning, but after Sunday I'm usually pretty tired. So Monday's pretty easy. Tuesday we'll do some like threshold intervals, so something like 5 by a mile or something like that. Wednesday easy 60 minutes, Thursday easy 60 minutes. Or I have started to build up to run through Studley Park over some hills for 75 minutes at the moment. Friday workout, which would be like a long threshold run, 8 to 10 kilometres. Saturday easy 60 minutes, and then Sunday I've built up to an hour 45 now. So that's been good enough to get 120 kilometres of running. That's probably where I'll stay for a few more weeks, and then start to add in some double runs, and then the week kind of changes a little bit. So in full-blown training, I would do 30 minutes every afternoon, so that would be the first edition.
Is that 7 days a week? Yeah.
But just pretty slow, like 5 to 5:15 pace, just strictly recovery. And some people would say it's junk mileage, I suppose, but I do find that I feel a lot better the next day just from flushing the legs out and jogging a little bit. So I would do that and then head to the gym a few times a week, which will be my addition in the next few weeks, I suppose.
Yeah.
And then the only other things that really change is on Monday we would do 60 minutes, but we add in 10 by 20 second strides, with either 20 seconds or 40 seconds recovery. 20 seconds are like somewhere between like 1500 and 3k intensity. So it's a continuous run. We don't change shoes or anything, but just kind of picking up the legs, and coach really thinks that's a good kind of recovery method. Just kind of getting the legs to loosen up through that range of motion. Kind of jogging, you just kind of shuffle around, so picking up the legs a little bit more just helps the blood flow and the muscles loosen up and that sort of thing, and get you in the rhythm and ready for Tuesday's workout. And then in the workout, normally there's 3 elements. So at the moment I'm just kind of doing the first element, which is the bulk of the session. But we would add in hills and then some fast strides at the end. So the hills would be at maybe 3k to 5k intensity, and anywhere between 30 to 40 seconds. And then the strides would be between 15 to 30 seconds, and usually at mile intensity, so pretty hard to finish off. And that's usually any session, so we do 8 by k, 5 by 5 minutes, 5 by mile, track workouts, and then we would do hills and strides at the end, and the same with threshold run. On a Friday afternoon, we might do 2 by 3 mile or 6 mile, 7 mile threshold run, and then finish off with hills and strides. So that's something that's a little different to what most people traditionally do. And then usually Thursday we would just put in some hill work as well. So out of season we would do strides again on Thursday, and then in season we would tend to do 10 by 10 to 15 second short sprint hills just in the middle of our run. So that one we would usually stop, change into flats, and really push up the hills and kind of jog back down and try and build a little bit of power, and then obviously the afternoon run just helps you recover that little bit for the Friday morning workout.
Yeah. Where are you doing your hills and stuff around here? Because Melbourne's a relatively flat kind of place. I know Anderson Street on the hill's got a reputation, but it's quite, it's 300 metres long or something, which is pretty decent. But where do you get to do those ones?
Usually Anderson Street if I'm doing a workout.
Yeah, down the hill in Melbourne.
Yeah. If we're doing so I guess another thing with the training is that we never really do like K repeats or mile repeats. It's always like 3 minutes or 5 minutes or 4 minutes. That's like a time-based rep. So you can kind of do it anywhere. You don't have to have a flat section. You don't have to keep going out and back on the same section. But I usually do my 3 minutes down at the town just because it is easy to do the hill work on Anderson Street. But otherwise, I haven't really done too much hill work just with my injuries at the moment, holding me back a little bit. So I'll be looking to add them in probably the coming months as well, and just start to build up that long run and start pushing that a little bit more. And that should be what I aim to hit and then hold throughout the season next year. Yeah,
nice. And how is the body holding up at the moment? It looks bloody fit. I saw you walk into Axel before. I thought, hang on a second, this bloke looks ready to run. Like
It's not too bad. My back is still playing up a little bit. Hip's still a little bit sore, but my foot, which is the major worry, I had a stress reaction in my sesamoid, has been pretty good. I got some orthotics made up, and Dean and Karen down at South Yarra Sport and Spine have been helping me out a lot. And then I seen Richard Squires this morning as well.
Champion, mate. He's got magic thumbs on him as well, doesn't he?
So that team has really helped me out the past 2 months, and I've probably been in there once or twice a week, every week since I've been back home. So I was thankful last week when Karen said, "All right, see you in 6 weeks," and I said, yes.
Yeah, you're the safe signal.
Because the reception team, I walk in, they go, back again.
Yes.
They're just making fun of me at this point. So it's good to get out of there a bit, and the body's holding up well at the moment. So as I start to build back into thing and hopefully add those double runs in and get in the pool and do a little bit more recovery work. Dean's been helping me a lot with the strength program, which Karen has actually been impressed with, because she said that I was about as strong as a 5-year-old baby when I first got there.
Was that her words?
So,
classic. They're fine words, Karen.
So I've been getting a little bit stronger and been really working on that as well. So I think it's all going in the right direction. Hopefully I'm stronger than ever and healthier than I have been in a long time. So now I just need to get the fitness back and look to the future. Yeah.
So where are you going to start doing your strength work? Will you do that down at the Sport and Spine, or are you?
I've kind of been just doing like body work exercises, honestly. So I just bought like a medicine ball and been doing a bit at home or down at the Glen Ferry Rec Centre. So I go down there and
I love the Glen Ferry Rec Centre. I can't justify spending $25 a week when I just want the gym.
I know. I get free access to with a Swinburne student card.
Oh, bro!
So I registered and signed up for Swinburne and enrolled in my first semester. Got the student card, and then I was going overseas, so I just deferred. So I haven't actually taken a class here yet.
That is perfect. Did you have to pay for your class?
No. So
mate, I feel like you've just given me an idea, because it is a beautiful leisure centre.
So the only thing is you only get free access to the pool.
Okay.
So I kind of like sneak into the gym sometimes. But I use the pool a lot as well. Another element of our training is if we don't want a double run, coach likes us to get in the pool and aqua jog.
Yeah.
So I've been doing that a few times a week, which people traditionally think is only what you do when you're injured. And I don't really like thrash it out and try and get my heart rate up and do a workout or anything. Just treat it the same as like an easy double run. So I would just jump in the pool and do an easy aqua jog for 20 or 30 minutes. And sometimes I do my double run and then jump in the pool after, because there's just something about it with that motion through the water that just helps the body recover. So
it's one thing I think a lot of athletes, even at an elite level, like when I say elite, I guess once you get to your level, it's something that everyone's looking for 1%ers. But at the level I ran at, which was I don't know what you would call it. I guess it was national level in the sense that I'd race around Australia, but it wasn't international level where you are. I think I started to really look at, okay, where can I improve and where can I sort of chip some time away. And I think the recovery element, it's still so overlooked amongst a lot of athletes.
Sure.
It's I don't know how you go, just speaking to you, it sounds like you got an incredible understanding of the importance of it, and far no wonder, because you've run the times you have. But like, what are some of the recovery methods that you implement? Because I think it's got the reputation running of, like, as long as you do more and you do it harder, and you just keep doing that, then you'll be fine. But then also a lot of athletes break. So some of the elements for any junior runners listening to this, that I'd love to pick your brain on around recovery. Like, what are some of the things that you implement?
Yeah, well, I think it is very important, and one of the most overlooked aspects of recovery, or elements of recovery, is sleep, first and foremost. So I try to get 9 hours, 10 hours sleep each night, and I think that's what you do, like, you're most recovering, and your body builds back up and restores the muscles and whatnot. So I think that's probably the most overlooked one, is generally just sleep. But the other ones, I tend to jump in like a sauna or spa a few times a week, jump in the pool to aqua jog a few times a week, and then I tend to do my rolling and stretching and that sort of stuff most mornings before I run, and most nights before I go to bed. So I mean, that's one thing that I really did struggle with. I never used to stretch, never used to roll or anything like that. And still sometimes it's kind of the thing where if you're tired after a workout or a run, you can kind of be a little lazy and a little slack and think, I don't need to do that, like it's 15 minutes that I can spend doing something else. But it is really important, and I think the main key for just improving in running is consistency. And my injuries were just some unlucky things that happened this year. I don't think it's from overuse or anything like that, and I have been lucky to stay pretty healthy for most of my career, just from taking the time to do a lot of that stuff. So it is really important to be able to stay consistent and keep running day in, day out, because that's the thing over all the hard work that's going to help you get to that next level and to be an elite runner, is just being able to do what you do each day, and that just comes down to recovering and feeling good so that you can do it the next day. So it is probably the most important element of track and field, I would say, is recovery.
Consistency is an interesting thing, not even just when it comes to track and field, just in life in general. We're always looking for the quickest way to get fit, and the quickest way to lose weight, and the quickest way to get smart. And I think that you're right. The best athlete seems to be the one that just understands that it's. I think it was Moneghetti who had like the phone book theory. Or Deke maybe, where it's quite easy to rip a page of a phone book, but like once you get a whole page, like a whole book together, you know what I mean? Like the training symbolic of or the page is symbolic of the training. It's a lot easier to break down.
I think it's something which sounds pretty cliche, and you hear everyone say is, consistency is the most important thing. But I mean, this past year, since seeing Karen and her sorting out my sinus infection and that sort of thing, I hadn't been sick in a year, and I used to get sick like 4 or 5 times a year and take 3 or 4 weeks off, and then kind of build back to where I was, and never really capitalize on my fitness, because I'd always get sick leading into a competition or something like that. And this past year, aside from the injuries I had, it was relatively healthy for most of it. And I would say right now, my workouts were easier. I was training less per week, 2 times a week instead of 3 times a week. But I was just I didn't even have really the same intensity that I had in training when I was in Canberra, but just making sure that I did everything and got it all done over a certain amount of time, which is probably like 6 to 8 months uninterrupted. I was able to run what I did, which is better than I ever have before. And I look back at that and think, okay, there was not one workout that stood out as, geez, I'm going to run something special. It was just doing 8x K at 3-minute K pace kind of thing, or 5 by mile at like 3:10 pace at threshold pace. That sort of thing over and over and over again, rather than, okay, I'm going to have 4 weeks of running 8x K at 250 pace, which sure, it's going to get me fitter in short term, but is it sustainable? No. I'm probably going to break down, get sick or get injured, and then where am I going to be in 6 weeks on the sideline rather than racing something? I just found taking a step back and honestly taking everything a little bit easier and relaxing a little bit more, not stressing about trying to find those 5 seconds per K in this session and that session, and just taking it as it comes. And if you feel good one day, you can push it a little bit more, but listen to your body and be smart was the main thing that has changed for me this year, and it's probably the reason why I'm running so well.
How do you find taking it as it comes? Like, because you seem like a pretty relaxed kind of guy. I know I've only known you for an hour and a half, but just to chat to you, like, you seem like it seems to be a common theme amongst a lot of elite athletes that there's this, it's almost, at least on the surface, it appears to be like a really stress-free approach to the sport, and the idea of just taking it as it comes. Again, like consistency, it sounds good, but it can be difficult when you're when you're in like a bit of a lull in terms of injury and stuff, like and sickness, like what you said you sort of had to deal with. Is that something you've worked on, or is that something you feel comes quite naturally to you?
Honestly, I say it and I can preach it, but I still find it pretty difficult.
Sure.
This was probably the hardest 2 months of my life, honestly, in terms of running, with these injuries, because I'd never really been injured before. And obviously it is quite devastating when you build up for something and get sick or get injured, or you can't do what you want to do in running due to injury. But I guess you just need to enjoy the good times and understand that doesn't happen so often. And when you do get injured, I guess it makes like those times where you do run well even more significant. So, I mean, this year my lows have been lower than ever before, but my highs have been higher than ever before. And I guess just respecting that running is a sport where you're not always going to be on top, and 1 year you can be the best in the world, and the next year you could not even make the world champs or the Olympics or whatever. It happens to everyone. I guess once you get to that level, you kind of understand more and more that 90% of people that make a world champs or Olympics has probably had something going on in their body, and probably pretty banged up by the time they get there, and probably need to take off some significant time afterwards. You know, there's no one that's really 100% healthy when they get there, and it's just a part of the sport. So you can do everything you can to try and minimise those injuries, but I guess at the end of the day, you kind of need to have that attitude of take it as it comes, because it happens to everyone. So.
Yeah, so do you follow the AFL at all? That's a random question, but it's going to make sense in a minute.
I mean, I've started to a little bit. Obviously, being in Melbourne, you
got to sort of get into it.
Where I grew up, it was all NRL based. So.
Yeah, sure. No, so I was just wondering because there's a bloke, Dennis Armfield, he used to play AFL here for Carlton, and he was on my other podcast, Intention, a few weeks back, and he was speaking about the same kind of thing. He said that just that realisation that it's cool that you're playing at this elite level sport that you've always looked up to, but to know, or that reality check of it's not always going to be like this, and there's going to be ups and downs even while you're at the top of your form is a tricky thing to adjust to. But mate, this last couple of months for you has been a crazy couple of months then, with the move and the body and I know what it's like when you move to a new town. Just that alone can be a little bit daunting and overwhelming. And I've got to put you in touch with Al Failer, because the bloke, he'll as I said, he'll love you. And it's funny because he actually, when I was running down there with him about 12 months ago, it was me, him, he's good mates with Mottram. I think Matty Hills was or might still be a part of that group. I'm not 100% sure, but I said I was doing a couple of runs with Huffer. He's like, mate, get him down. We love Huffer. Have you met him? He's like, no, I can just tell. So mate, if I give him a phone call and say, hey Al, I got Geordie and big Huff for you.
Yeah, he'll love it.
Mate, he'll love it. Feel free to. I'll edit this part out if you don't want anything to do with it. But, what was I going to say? I was going to say something else as well. Zach and Newman. There's a. I think I mentioned to you the elevator before. Yep. He's one of the boys that runs along there. I think he's like 35, something 36.
Okay.
But just a super relaxed kind of guy I have to hook you up with. But mate, that was cool.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming on.
No, thank you.
That's awesome. You made the podcast better looking, a bit more wide. That's unreal. Bro, we'll have to touch base later in the year, and mate, you're 400 metres away, so we got no excuse.
We'll meet up for a run tomorrow.
Oh, seriously? I know. I bloody put my foot in it as well, because I was laughing yesterday. Huff said to me, he goes, mate, we'll have to line up for a run. I said, well, how fast are you running? And I don't know what he said, 4 minutes or something like that. He goes, but go for a run with yourself. I thought, fuck, I'm going to have to start training just so I can keep up in a training session, you know. I've been too busy focusing on my biceps and my pecs that I'm not sure how good my running form's going to be, but we'll find out real soon.
Yeah.
All right, brother, that was great. Thanks for coming on, man. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Awesome, bro. Oh, dude, that was good.
Yeah.